laptop exposure compensation. My fault, of course, I should have noticed it. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. And in this video I'm gonna share some Fuji love because I haven't used my Fuji camera for a long time, for about 8 months to be precise. And this is the X-T30 and the lens is the Sigma 30mm f1.4. Let's take a walk. I already made one video where I was explaining how I spent the winter in Southeast Asia, and some of my cameras had to stay behind here in Helsinki, Finland. And now, after such a long break, these cameras, these Fuji and a couple of other cameras, they feel almost like new cameras. This X-T30 is such a nice camera. It's lightweight, compact, great image quality, and it has all the features I need for my photography. Okay, I wouldn't mind IBIS, but then again I have other cameras with IBIS and I can always use those cameras if I need IBIS. This is great for casual photo walks like today. This extra grip that my friend Alexi gave me, this transforms the handling of this camera. It really makes a big difference. Without the grip, I think the camera feels too small and awkward to handle. And I think it's stupid to design a camera like this that requires an extra third-party grip. But then again, I guess there are so many different types of users with different hand sizes that it's impossible to design one perfect shape that fits all hands. And therefore I think it's really nice that we have these first party and third party options that you can use to customize your camera to your liking. This Sigma 30mm f1.4 is a great choice for budget-conscious Fuji shooter. It's also very lightweight and very sharp and fast autofocus and pretty much everything you can hope for, except the aperture ring. It doesn't have aperture ring, and that is a downside in my opinion, especially on Fuji cameras, because these Fuji dials that you have to use to choose the aperture, they feel really spongy and not responsive. Because they have double action, you can also press the dial, which makes it feel really rubbery and not high quality at all. So I would really enjoy it if I had ring on the lens to control the aperture, and then I could use the shutter speed dial on the camera to control the shutter speed. But I guess you can't have it all for half the price, and if I want the aperture ring, I guess I have to be ready to shell out the full price and get a first party Fuji lens. But other than the aperture ring, this is a really nice lens, and the price is affordable too. When I started using this camera after this 8-month break, I noticed that some of the camera settings were really weird. And I was wondering, is it possible for a camera to reset itself to the factory defaults when it's in the storage for a long time without a battery? Because some of the settings were really weird and I had to reset the camera, pretty much every setting to my liking again. And I could understand if one or two settings were off, if I was experimenting something when I was last using this camera last year. But no, pretty much every setting was off and I had to reprogram the buttons and everything, and that was really weird. Have you had any similar experiences? It's late afternoon and the light is not the best, but it's also not the worst. And actually in the summer here in the very north part of the world, the light is actually quite decent all the time in the summer, no matter what time of the day it is. And because of the super long days, you can take a photo walk almost 24 hours a day without any need for a tripod, for example. Then again, if you need total darkness or you'd like to do astrophotography, it's not possible right now because it does not get dark even during the darkest hour of the night. I have to say I slightly miss the busy outdoor street life of Kuala Lumpur, where I spent the last 7 months. But then again, I think it's good for me and my photography to be here in Finland in a completely different environment and to shoot completely different types of pictures for a change. And I think I have to recommend something similar to all of you if you want to develop and become a better photographer. I guess I mentioned already that this Sigma is the only lens I have for Fuji, and I'd like to get another lens, a 28mm equivalent. But there are not that many choices. There is the old 18mm f2 Fuji lens, which is one of the oldest lenses for the system, and I think it's otherwise a fine lens. But I'm concerned about the autofocus, speed and reliability because it is such an old design. And it's quite expensive too, even today, and especially compared to some other contemporary, current, newer Fuji lenses. It's surprisingly expensive. And I'm kind of waiting for Fuji to come up with a new version of that lens, and I might be ready to buy that if such lens ever comes out. I have no plans to build a massive Fuji system because this Fuji is just for recreational photo walk purposes, but I would like to have another lens to have some options, and to be honest, a 50mm equivalent or whatever this is, 45 or so, is 30mm. It's not really my thing. I'd like to have a little bit wider angle of view for my photo walk photography. The viewfinder in this camera is not great if you wear glasses. I can't push the viewfinder close enough to my eye to be able to see properly. I have to sort of peek around the corners to be able to see the whole frame. And it makes me use the back screen a lot, which in itself is not a big problem. I've used that already with my Ricoh GR3 and 3X cameras. But because there is the viewfinder, I'd like it to be a proper viewfinder and not almost like a useless thing like this. And this is, granted, this is an affordable camera, but this same viewfinder problem is present in many much more expensive cameras too. And I suppose the camera manufacturers, they don't really appreciate us who wear glasses. My exposure mode today is aperture priority and auto ISO. I have also activated the electronic shutter because the mechanical shutter on this camera bottoms out at 1/4000, and if I want to use the wide open f1.4, it's the 1/4000 is not enough, and the electronic shutter goes, I think, all the way up to 1/32,000 or something like that. So to make sure I get correct exposure at every aperture, I want to activate the electronic shutter. I just realized that I've been shooting all the time with a third of a stop negative exposure compensation, and it's my fault, of course. I should have noticed, but I also want to blame the camera just a little bit because there's no lock on the dial. And it goes to show that we all should always check our settings before we start shooting. However, because I'm shooting raw, it's not a big deal, easy to correct in post. One of the upsides of shooting raw, you can easily correct minor mistakes in post. Even though I'm complaining about this camera, I still like the camera. It's a really nice camera, although it may not always sound like that when I'm talking about it. Anyway, this is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this little photo walk with me and the Fuji X-T30 and the Sigma 30mm f1.4 lens. Thanks so much for joining in, and if you found this video photo walk entertaining, please do consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below for that if you don't live in Finland. Thanks so much, and I'll definitely see you again in another video.